Welcome to Sikorski's Think Abouts on the Daily Blue, and I'm your host, Laura Sikorski. Our show appeals to all levels of management, and it's our vision that you think about how your company reacts to customer service and customer experience. Our goal is to have guests who share their expertise with you and help you from a management and development process. And you could have a call center, you can have a customer service center, you can have a billing department, a retail store, but it's all touch points that have to deal with your customers. Today our guest is Francia Smith. Francia is going to talk to us about back to the basics and why, and we're going to have quite a nice conversation about that. But she is president of CI3, which is located in New York City, so she got up very early today to come out to Long Island, which I'm very thankful for.
You're welcome.
Her career began with the United States Postal Service. In 2001, she was one of 12 women in 250 years that was promoted to a corporate executive position, Vice President, Consumer Affairs and Consumer Advocate. So for that, we're very thankful. Her responsibility during that time and prior to that was always in the human resources area, and then consumer interest became her focus. We met in 1995 when I was hired with 5 other consultants to develop and implement a telephony national customer service center. And it was a $2.8 billion, and that is with a B, and it was the call center network that you guys know of as 1-800-ASK-USPS. It was the largest call center at the time globally, and we received 1 million calls a week. So to say nothing, we have an experience for call centers, but our talk today is really going to be about businesses. And Francia thought that Back to the Basics is going to be a great title. And so I am going to ask her to start off why Back to the Basics is a great thing to do for every corporation.
Oh, I think, well, first of all, as we were talking, most people's days are filled with troubleshooting and emergencies. And we get into an adrenaline rush, and we're continuously going through the short-term kinds of activities. And then what happens is we get lots of organizational energy dispersed, and people forget what the outcome really is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So going back to the basics, it's like going back to your nutritional basics. They're very basic building blocks that get you back focused, harnesses the energy of your organization, aligns management decisions in a much more tight way, and creates a momentum that really moves the rock, which is what most people want to do, but very often can't figure out how to do. So I've made it simple. There are lots of things you could do, but I've reduced it to 3 simple issues that you need to address.
And that's why the company is CI3.
Well, but the idea behind CI3 has to do with the third eye, which is actually the chakra that has to do with insight. And many people have said, I have great insights. And those insights really are created within the context of looking to integrate people's energy and to produce innovation. But basically what we're all about is making the serious business fun, because that's where all the energy comes from.
I agree, totally agree. So let's talk a little bit, when you talk about organizational drift, I think of that as, you earlier alluded to, we're so busy, we forget things, we're just not focused on what we should be focused on, and we forget about our customers. And I think in this day and age, organizational drift to me means, what are we doing with our customers? How come they're leaving? Why are we not giving them a great experience? So let's kind of talk about, back to basics from that perspective.
Well, that organizational drift is, what you're talking about is the fact that all businesses should be focused on the marketplace, and the customers are reflecting the thought process of the marketplace. If you're not aligned with that, and you are carried away with things, and we all know, I work for the Postal Service, you hear many voices when you're managing, whether you're an executive or a supervisor, and when you look at surveys, what you see is people are responding to somebody above them all the time. These people above of them.
Right.
Well, part of what happens when you go back to the basics is you have to start looking at where the basic interaction in your company is, whether you're a function serving the company or a function serving the public, but where is the customer you're ultimately serving, and what is the voice of that customer, because that then actually gets you back to the basics of who you are and the purpose that you're there for.
And I totally 100% agree, because there are so many corporations today that are so ingrained with bottom line, bottom line, bottom line, that they're cutting, departments that deal with the customer, and that certainly then impacts how they are looking to the customer out in the field.
Well, we could have a very long discussion about the engineering and accounting mindset created by the balance sheet, which comes from the 1950s. We have talked a great deal about customer service and customer-driven organizations. We've never changed that balance sheet.
Right.
So the operations, which is the only thing you really control in an organization, is what people always regress to when, in fact, they feel that they need to cut
money,
a budget.
And how sad that is.
Well, it is sad. Well, again, and this is part of what we'll talk about in just a few minutes. As an organization, as a function, you as the manager of the function, need to understand the value add that you provide to the organization in your unique way, because that then begins to help the organization understand that you are valuable.
And that could be a person, or it could be a department. And
Exactly.
a lot of people forget that it's a little bit of all.
Right.
So let's talk about your 3 Ps.
Well, I always liked, again, one of the things that the CI3 stands for is 3. I believe, having been in an organization that is huge, communicating, and a person who talks a great deal, I have found that the easiest thing to do is reduce, and most effective way to communicate and organize is around 3 things. It focuses the mind, it focuses your energy, it pulls everyone together. So the 3 things that I've presented today are purpose and values, which is the first P, people and performance. I see those as the basic building blocks of any organization, whether it's 15,000 people or 15 people. And going back to those basic building blocks is a critical part of avoiding organizational drift and coalescing your energy in your organization. So again, I mean, that's not a hard question to answer. Who are you?
Right.
It's really interesting if you walk around and ask who are you in your organization, just randomly. It'll be interesting to hear just the 3 words that people come up with. They can be shocking at times. It's a surprise.
Give an example, like what you've seen somebody say to you, who are you?
Well, what happens is people will think they're in a retail business, and the words that come up are a service industry kind of business. And so what happens is especially when you listen to people who touch the customer, every single day those people hear what the customer says about your business. And the words they come up with are not the patois, the organizational patois of the organization.
Right.
They're the real marketplace language and lexicon that people talk about, which is you're giving me a solution to my my clothing issues.
Right.
Or, it is not some fancy marketing tool. It is it comes out of a simple conversation, I guess is what I want to say.
And that's what a lot of times, when the line level says something and they know that it's a problem within the organization, and they don't have anybody to tell because nobody listens to them.
Well, and
that's when you say, who are you? You're supposed to be a listener. You're supposed to be empathetic. Your active listening kind of skill should be coming out at that point. What is your unique value add?
Well, my philosophy is, when I was managing an organization from a very, very big standpoint, I don't see any value in having anyone who's redundant in an organization. So each individual, whether it's the individual or it's the organization, needs to be able to articulate, this is what I add in this whole business proposition between the customer and the marketplace and the success of the business. So the idea is, what is that value add? You do not want, if you're a call center, you do not want to be doing the work of an information systems group. You know, I mean, so you have to say, this is who I am.
Right.
This is what I add in terms of
Or if you're in a
value.
retail environment, you know, that when I come up to the counter, you're going to help me. You're not going to stand there like that and have a, you know, sad face on, because I'm going to walk away. Even though
Exactly.
I may have just bought that $10,000 necklace.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
kind of a thing.
No,
So-
but that's again the whole idea that each building block, I mean, each part of the organizational chain, and all organizations are just people. I mean,
That's it.
people get into this, they're not brick and mortar, they're human beings, and each one of those people and the interactions they have with the marketplace and the customer and within themselves to support the people
Right.
who are touching the marketplace and the customer, what is that sort of unique value
And that's
added?
really important, because I was reading an article recently, and they talked about the human factor.
Yeah, hello.
Businesses have forgot the human factor. We all know that press 1, press 2 stuff. It's just painful.
Right.
And we all just want to talk to somebody real quick, get an answer, and move on. So
Yes, well, and that there's something to be said of that value added is the human touch, and words that you answer to this need to be reflective of the collective view of the individuals in your organization, not the people who are just the managers or the supervisors. It's the
Right.
staff level people too.
absolutely. And then, you know, what are the values that you recognize and reward?
Yeah. Well, this is not a casual conversation. We could go on for a long time on values. What really happens is in organizations, many times higher up people sort of lay out certain kinds of values that they say there. Very often in attitude surveys, you see a big disconnect between what people say they believe in and value and what they actually
And then what they
reward.
actually do.
And what I found is, and so the real critical question is, what do you spend your time, what you value is what you spend your time on, what you prioritize is something that you'll put energy on and money on, and what you in fact are, that you really care about. And the best way of finding out, especially as a manager, what your values are as a manager is to ask the people who you work with.
And we had a conversation before we were on the show began, and it was the importance of asking your staff.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Because you can sit there and say one thing. One of the things I asked my managers to come in and tell me what my values were. I was raised a good Catholic girl down in Georgia. It sounds like inconsistent, but true. I thought I was very traditional. The first word of everybody's mouth was, anything non-traditional you pay attention to. I was stunned.
Wow.
I was almost speechless, which was really amazing too. But that is, and they all came, there were 3 of them, and I made them come in separately. They couldn't talk to each other. And they came in and sat down, and they say, you pay attention to anything that hasn't ever been done before.
And I think one of Francia's management styles, and it has gone, it kind of went into her consulting business, is that she feels you need to do it on your own. And she will give you guidance and then relies on you to perform. And that, I think, is a very interesting trait for all of us to make and to do and to lead by example. So let's kind of talk a little bit about people.
Well, our second building block is your people. And I think I told you that Gallup did a meta-analysis of morale and attitude surveys that had been created. There were hundreds of them. And what they came up with were some key findings, like the top 5 things that people really needed, one of which was role clarity, which was very interesting, which is, wouldn't you think everyone would know?
Right,
people used to give me a hard time when I used to say, let's define what your role is within the purpose of our organization. So when you have purpose and values defined, here are the 3 things we are as an organization uniquely. What do you as a staff person or supervisor do, or functional manager do, in order to accomplish your role. And also, in addition to role clarity, is the whole issue of do your people have enough information
to do what it is that they need to do,
and do they have the tools to do what they need to do.
And in many times in a customer service environment, if you don't empower that staff member to be able to answer and give back to the customer what they're asking for, that's a big problem in the customer service industry today. And because they've not asked the staff what is happening with our customers, how can we empower you to get that, to make them happy? It's just not happening. And that's
one of the biggest reasons for turnover is people don't feel in the customer service area they can give the customer what they really need.
Right, and they just feel lost. They don't want to lie because that's not in your character.
Well, because they're relating to a human being on the telephone. Would you want to do that?
Of course
I don't think so.
Of course not. I like this one. What feedback do your people regularly receive to improve their job output?
Well, the whole idea is you're always reinforcing behavior that directs individuals toward the role they're supposed to be playing within the purpose, and you also are rewarding any behavior that's within that value system, and then you're helping coach individuals when their behavior or their output doesn't come up to the standard that you're looking for.
Right.
In the moment. People like it in the moment. And we can have a long conversation at some future point on feedback, because the one of the most interesting issues is people rarely give feedback. And I've talked
and
a lot.
And that's so sad.
In the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, because they wait until evaluation time or what have you. And the best time to give anybody feedback, in improvement feedback, and even celebration of what a great job you did, is in the moment. Because
and there are
people
so
forget.
many managers that don't do that. In retail, they don't walk the floor and they don't say, "Oh, you were real great with that customer."
That's right.
And it's a very sad state, for us. Okay, the third P.
Oh, well, the third piece, again, goes back to that purpose and values. What are the critical few things that you're actually identifying and rewarding? People, you can give them a list of 15 things. People can't hold that on their plate. Reduce it to the critical few that align with your values, that align with your organizational direction, and then reward and celebrate that to a fair, to the fairly well. And the final one here really has to do with observable behaviors. And I happen to be a psychologist. That's a big issue, which is, can you observe the behavior? But it's very interesting to define what you're measuring in terms of performance, in terms of a behavior that you can give an example of.
Right.
Or, one of the things that comes to mind is judgment. I have a simple way of saying, do you ask when you should ask? And do you not ask when you shouldn't ask? So there's a very interesting kind of, that's a operational behavioral definition of judgment. That's a really important thing to do, because then people have an opportunity to reflect on their own behavior. So
absolutely, totally agree. So let's talk about the game of three. And everyone, this is a trademark that Francia has, and I have seen Francia in action as a facilitator. When you're a consultant and you have to get people to ask, to answer questions and to feel that comfortable with you. And this is where Francia excels as a facilitator. So if you need a facilitator, want to do the game of three, once you hear what it is, you may give us a call. Let's talk about the game.
Well, the game of three is essentially a focused, fast, and fun way of identifying answers to those basic questions that we have posed to the organization, and it limits your response to any question to 3 words, not 3 phases, 3 sentences. Just
that's
3
got to
words.
be, especially for me,
have
1 word or 3 words.
No.
A wee sentence.
But what's amazing is it focuses your consciousness. You get enormous clarity when you require very focused, fast responses in 3 words, and you ask groups of people to do it.
Give an example of a question.
Well, the question would be, what's the purpose of your organization? How would you define 3 words that describe your organization? It is a customer input or customer feedback organization. It is an organization that answers questions, maybe
That's the
short
part, okay.
phrases and that sort of thing. Answers key questions. And what you do is each individual, instead of brainstorming, which I find people like you and I can be a little bit dominant in brainstorming, I found that if you give everyone a Post-it and then ask each person to write one word or one short phrase on each one of the Post-its, everyone gets an opportunity to give feedback. Then you pull the Post-its together, you put them on a board, you find where the common words are. It's a very simple process. I mean, and 80% of the time you get 2 out of the 3 words pretty much come up or sound the same. Then the third word is a little bit more of a struggle, and then you have these wonderful conversations about the view of what that word means and what it means to you as an individual, what it means to you as an organization. And at the end, you have 3 words that you can use to communicate to everybody that you work with. This is who I am. I mean, our organization does 3 things, and everybody in your organization knows those 3
So everybody
words.
becomes focused on what it is that we stand for as a company.
Exactly.
And I think that's a spectacular way to do it, because when you get people in a room, you always have the talkers and you always have the guys that sit behind, and then you have the big boss who's very domineering, or she's very domineering, and they're like us and we know the world, so we're not going to talk about it anymore. But it's amazing to me the feedback that you get from asking, and when you have to limit it,
and then nobody's trying to dot I's or cross T's because it's a long sentence. It's words that everybody then is focused on agreeing for. So it's an agreement exercise as opposed to a divergent exercise.
It's like a bond. We're bonded together. We agree together. So of course, the show is Thinkabouts, and our 3 Thinkabouts for today's show is making serious business fun. And I think what Francia has talked about is explaining when you are going to talk to your staff and you want to do perhaps a game of 3, or you want to interview and so forth, don't be so serious. Life is too short, and if you business, you day in, day out, you come to work, you do your things, make it fun.
Fun makes your mind be much more creative.
It does.
There's neuroscience on that. That's not just my idea. So,
but I think it's a good one. Critical few. Let's kind of recap for our audience what you meant by critical few.
The idea is individuals can't retain more than 3 things at any one time. Identify the unique value-added items that you want as purpose, your value, what you want your people to have in order to do their job, and what you're actually evaluating in terms of their performance. Then you get a tight, informed, aligned organization, and you get everybody's energies on those few things.
Absolutely. And then the behavioral definition of words.
Well, and that idea is actually giving examples or defining a word in terms of a behavior you can actually see and people can replicate.
They can visualize it.
That's exactly
and so
right.
forth.
As opposed to some ambiguous kind of, the idea is never to be lofty, always to be accessible. And accessibility and plain speak is better than, it's one of the most powerful tools organizations have, from my view.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe, but we are at our closing of our show, and this went very, very quickly. So thank you, Francia, and hope to see you back soon. We'll probably be talking about change management next time. And our next week's show is, our guest will be Randy Bussey. Randy is president of Workforce Development Group, and she is training and development. And so we're going to talk about the importance of training in the workplace environment. So with that, I thank you all for clicking in, and thank you for watching Sikorski's Thinkabouts. Have a great afternoon.